My name is Ashley, and the day I signed the papers to buy my brother's house, my mother looked at me like I had just stolen a baby out of her arms. You can't do this, she said, voice shaking. This is your brother's home. Your grandparents would be sick if they knew. We were standing in a bland title office conference room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, manila folders stacked on the table between us. On top of the stack was a deed. The address printed on it was my brother Ethan's, and underneath, on the buyer line, was my name. The same house my mother had used my inheritance to help him buy. The same inheritance my grandparents had specifically said was supposed to be split evenly between us. I picked up the pen, my hand perfectly steady, and said the one sentence I'd been holding back for years. They already knew what you did, Mom. I'm just finally balancing the books. Then I signed. I grew up in a quiet town in Tennessee, the kind where everyone knows which house used to belong to whose grandma and which diner had the best pie 30 years ago. My grandparents were church every Sunday, serve every penny people. Grandpa Dan worked at the same factory for 40 years. Grandma Ruth ran the library like it was the FBI. They were not fancy, but they were steady. Every Christmas, when they gave us savings bonds instead of toys, my brother Ethan would groan. "What am I supposed to do with this?" he'd complain. "I can't play with it." Grandma would pat my knee and say, "You'll thank us one day, kids. Money you don't touch adds up." I believed her. Ethan did not. Grandma and Grandpa made it clear, in 100 little ways, that they wanted both of us to have a better starting point than they'd had. They talked about college money and a little nest egg. When I was about 13, I overheard them talking to my parents in the kitchen. "We're setting up the will so that the money's split evenly between the kids," Grandpa said. "Ashley's good with saving already. Ethan's, well, he'll need guidelines. But we trust you to handle the details when we're gone." Mom did her sympathetic head tilt. "Of course," she said. "You can count on me. I'll make sure it's fair." That word would haunt me later. Ethan is 2 years older than me, which in our house meant 2 years ahead in line for everything. First phone, first car, first curfew extension. I was the easy one. Quiet, bookish, did my homework without being told. He was the spirited one. Loud, impulsive, constantly needing rescuing from whatever he'd gotten himself into. Mom adored him. Dad was stricter with him, but even his anger had soft edges. When Ethan crashed Dad's old car at 17 because he was texting and driving, my dad yelled for an hour. Then he spent the weekend fixing the fender instead of letting Ethan ride the bus. They called it a wake-up call. When I got my license and asked to borrow the car to go to the library, Mom said, "Gas is expensive, Ash. Maybe you can ride with a friend." It wasn't that they hated me. They just didn't worry about me. Not the way they worried about Ethan. "You're our strong one," Mom would say, squeezing my shoulder. "You're so independent. You'll always land on your feet." It sounded like a compliment. What it really meant was, "We feel comfortable sacrificing your safety net, because we assume you'll find another one." My grandparents never treated us that differently. They came to my choir concerts and Ethan's football games with the same enthusiasm. They asked about my grades and his job search with the same concern. When I made honor roll, Grandma baked a pie. When Ethan finally passed his GED after dropping out of high school, she baked another one. "You're both capable," she'd say. Just in different ways. She was wrong about the capable part, at least at that point. When Ethan was 19, he got a job at a car lot, selling used trucks. He wore a too-big suit and came home talking about commissions and leads. Mom beamed. "He's really turning it around," she told anyone who would listen. All he needed was a chance. Then he got caught skimming deposit money and left before they could fire him. Next came a job at a roofing company. He quit after 3 weeks because the boss was a jerk. Then a stint delivering pizzas, which ended when he totaled his car sliding through a stop sign on a rainy night. Through all of this, my grandparents kept encouraging him. "You'll find your thing," Grandpa said. "Just don't burn bridges." He was big on that phrase. Don't burn bridges. I took it to heart. Ethan didn't. When I was 20, and Ethan was 22, my grandparents died in a car accident on the way back from a church retreat. A semi-driver fell asleep and crossed the center line. 1 minute they were singing hymns with friends. The next, they were gone. Grief is weird. It comes in waves. Shock, tears, numbness, then back again. At the funeral, Mom cried in big dramatic sobs. Dad stood stiffly by the caskets, jaw clenched. Ethan cried too, but he also spent a lot of time outside the church, chain-smoking and arguing with his girlfriend. I sat in the front pew staring at the carnations on Grandma's casket and thinking, over and over, they worked their whole lives and didn't even get to enjoy retirement. A couple of weeks later, we had the reading of the will. It wasn't as formal as movies make it look. We went to the attorney's office downtown, sat in a small conference room with bad coffee, and listened while he explained what my grandparents had set up. There was some money set aside for charity. Their car went to my Aunt Marlene. Most of their modest savings and the proceeds from selling their house were to go into 2 equal shares, one for Ethan and one for me, managed by our mother as executor until each of us turned 25. It's not a fortune, the attorney said, but it's a solid little start for them. Mom dabbed her eyes. They were always so thoughtful, she said. Dad asked a few questions about taxes. Ethan zoned out. I listened carefully. Does it have to be given to us all at once at 25? I asked. Or can it be used earlier for like college or a down payment or something? The will gives your mother some discretion as executor, the attorney said, as long as it's used for your benefit. The idea was to help you start adult life with some stability. For our benefit, I repeated. He nodded. My grandparents had done what they could. They'd planted seeds. It was up to my mom to make sure we both got to eat. I trusted her. I shouldn't have. At the time, I was still in college at the local state university, living at home to save money. I had a partial scholarship, some loans, and a part-time job at the campus library. Ethan was working at yet another job this time as a delivery driver for an appliance store. He'd just moved back in after crashing on friends' couches for a year. One night, a few months after the will meeting, I came home from class to find Mom and Ethan at the kitchen table with a pile of brochures, realtor cards scattered, printouts of house listings. What's going on? I asked, dropping my bag. Big news, Mom said, beaming. Your brother is going to buy a house. Ethan grinned, leaning back in his chair. Gotta stop throwing money away on rent, he said. Time to build equity. I looked at the glossy photos. 3-bedroom ranch with an attached garage. Brick bungalow with a big yard. Stuff way out of Ethan's league, as far as I knew. I asked. I mean, that's great, but where are you getting a down payment? I've been saving, he said defensively. Not everyone's broke, Ash. Mom reached over and squeezed his arm. And he's not doing it alone, she said. We're helping. With what money? I asked, genuinely confused. You guys just paid for the funeral. And you said the roof here needs replacing. She paused. Then she said the words that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Your grandparents wanted you kids to have a good start, she said. What better start than a home? My mouth went dry. Wait, I said slowly. You're using the inheritance for his house? Some of it, she said. The estate lawyers said we could. It's investing in his future. His future, I repeated. What about mine? You're still in school, she said. You have loans and scholarships. You don't need a house right now. Ethan is ready. He's starting a life with Jessica. They want to get married and have kids. They need stability. And I don't? I asked. Don't make this about you, she snapped. This is a family decision. A family decision where only one child benefits, I said. She glared. Your share is still there, she said. We're not taking it. We're just borrowing against it. When he's settled and the market goes up, we'll refinance, pull some cash out, and replenish what we used. You'll get your inheritance, just later. It sounded like one of Ethan's terrible plans dressed up in financial vocabulary. Does Dad know about this? I asked. He trusts me to handle it, she said. You should too. I looked at Ethan. He shrugged. Relax, he said. You heard her. It's an investment. When this place appreciates, there'll be more for everyone. When, not if. I swallowed a dozen arguments. Instead, I said, how much are you using? That's not your concern, Mom said sharply. You're not 25 yet. It kind of is my concern if you're spending my share, I said. She stood up. This conversation is over, she said. Be happy for your brother. I wasn't. But I was outvoted. They spent the next few weeks touring houses. I spent them running numbers in my head and trying not to have a panic attack. They found a 3-bedroom ranch on a cul-de-sac in a good school district. Perfect starter home material. It was listed at a price that made me queasy. The market was hot. They offered over asking. The sellers accepted. We're closing in 30 days. Mom announced at dinner one night, like she'd just won the lottery. Isn't it exciting for him? I said. Sure. Don't be bitter, she scolded. You'll get your turn. Your grandparents wanted parity, not identical timing. Parity. Another word that would haunt me. At closing, Mom beamed in photos. Ethan held up a set of keys like he'd done something heroic. Dad stood in the background looking worried. I saw the HUD statement afterward. Mom left it on the counter. The down payment was a lot. Way more than any savings Ethan could have pulled together. Renovation costs hit next. New floors. Fresh paint. A complete kitchen update to add value. Every time I walked into that house over the next year, I saw my grandparents' years of working and saving manifesting as subway tile and stainless steel appliances, and not 1 cent of it had my name on it anymore. I didn't get firm confirmation that my share was gone until my 25th birthday. By then, Ethan was married to Jessica. They'd had a baby. Mom had turned grandmotherhood into a full-time personality. I, on the other hand, had graduated, gotten a job at an accounting firm, and was living in a cheap apartment with 2 roommates, hustling to pay off my own student loans with zero help. On my birthday, we had a small family dinner at a restaurant. Ethan and Jessica brought the baby. Everyone made a big deal about how I was a quarter of a century. At dessert, Dad cleared his throat. So, he said, you're 25 now. Last time I checked, I said. Mom reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. For a moment my heart lifted. Maybe they'd listened. Maybe there was something left. She handed it to me with a tight smile. From the estate, she said. Inside was a check. For $3,000. I must have made a face, because she said quickly, we know it's not what you were expecting. But your grandparents didn't have as much as you thought. Funerals are expensive. We helped Ethan, yes. But we also paid off some things here. Medical bills, the roof, the lawyer. Life happens. $3,000. On paper, I knew that was not nothing. Plenty of people would kill for an extra $3,000. But I also knew my grandparents. I'd seen their bank statements in that attorney's office. I knew roughly how much their house had sold for. That check was a fraction of what my half should have been, even after fees and expenses. How much did Ethan get? I asked, my voice too calm. Mom bristled. That's private, she said. Between us and him. You're giving me $3,000, I said. After using my share to get him into a house. The house that my money is still sitting in as equity. It's not your money, she said. It's all of ours. We're family. If it's all of ours, I said, why does only one of us have a deed with his name on it? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Ash, he said. We did what we thought was best. We couldn't let your brother's family be homeless. You're doing fine. You have a good job, your own apartment. This money is a bonus for you. For him, it was survival. There it was again. You're strong. You can handle it. Therefore, we can take from you and call it love. I folded the check and put it back in the envelope. Thanks, I said. I'll put it somewhere safe. Later, I used it to pay down the highest interest student loan balance. It felt like feeding a starving animal a single cracker. For a long time after that, I carried a mix of anger and shame. Anger at my mom for playing God with my grandparents' wishes. Shame that I cared so much about money when we were all alive and healthy. That was her line whenever I brought up the inheritance. Your grandparents wouldn't want you obsessing about this, she'd say. They'd just be happy you're doing well. I stopped trying to argue. Instead, I started building. If I couldn't rewrite the past, I could at least write a better sequel. My job at the accounting firm was boring but educational. I saw real estate investors' books. Saw how they structured deals. What a healthy balance sheet looked like. What a disaster looked like. I noticed something. The people who did well weren't necessarily the ones with huge paychecks. They were the ones who used what they had strategically. No impulse big purchases. No, I deserve this debt. Just patient, boring growth. I decided to become one of those boring people. I lived under my means. No new cars. No luxury apartments. I worked toward my CPA license at night. I paid down my loans aggressively. I treated that stolen inheritance like a debt I owed myself. Every extra dollar went into Ashley's replacement fund. When the student loans finally hit zero, I took the payment amount and redirected it into savings and a small investment account. I ran numbers on properties the way other people did on vacation packages. If my mom had decided my inheritance should live in a house, I thought, then fine. I'd put it in a house too. One with my name actually on the title. While I was doing all that, Ethan's life went the other direction. At first, the house looked like a success story. He and Jessica posted pictures of barbecues in the backyard, baby's first steps on the hardwood floors my grandparents' money had refinished. Mom called it the family home. Then the cracks started showing. He changed jobs every year. Sales, construction, some multi-level marketing thing. Each one came with a short burst of extra cash, a new Toya big TV, a nicer truck, a fancy grill, and then a crash. They refinanced the house at least twice. Doing some debt consolidation, Mom said proudly. Lowering their monthly payments. Translation: rolling credit card debt into the mortgage to free up those cards again. Jessica's Instagram shifted from beach photos to quotes about toxic negativity. They fought more, according to Mom. About money. About work. About Ethan's follow your passion attitude. I watched all of this from a distance. I tried, once, to give him advice. We were in his impossibly nice kitchen, granite counters gleaming, baby toys scattered on the floor. Your rate is really high, I said, looking at his latest refinance paperwork. And this adjustable thing is dangerous. You're relying on optimism instead of math. He rolled his eyes. Here we go, he said. Miss CPA thinks she's the only one who understands numbers. I'm saying if the market hiccups, you're screwed, I said. You should cut back on expenses, build an emergency fund, stop using the house like an ATM. He held up a hand. I didn't ask for a lecture, he said. This house will appreciate. We're fine. He wasn't. But you can't fix someone who thinks advice is an attack. So I shut up and went back to my spreadsheets. By the time I was 30, I had a decent chunk of savings. Not enough to buy some giant dream house. Enough for a solid down payment on a small starter property. I found it in a tired little duplex on the edge of town. Nothing special from the outside. Peeling paint. Sagging porch. Inside it had good bones and bad decisions. Awful carpet covering hardwood. Weird bathroom color choices. But the price was right. I bought it, moved into the smaller unit, and rented out the other. The rent paid my mortgage and then some. Suddenly, I wasn't just Ashley the accountant. I was Ashley the landlord. When my mom found out, she was lukewarm. That's a lot of responsibility, she said. Are you sure you can handle it? Pretty sure, I said. I've been handling even more responsibility for free since I was a kid. She didn't laugh. She never liked that version of the joke. Ethan scoffed. Why would you want to deal with tenants, he said. Owning one house is enough of a headache. I almost asked, how's that one house going? I didn't. I let time answer for me. The first big sign of trouble came in the form of a missed Christmas. My family is big on holiday gatherings. Even when we're mad at each other, we show up for the food. That year, Ethan and Jessica didn't come. Oh, they're busy, Mom said vaguely. The roads are bad. The roads were fine. In January, I found out the real reason. Mom called me one evening, voice high and tight. Your brother and Jessica are separating, she said. She moved out. She took the kids. I leaned against my kitchen counter, the phone warm against my ear. I'm sorry, I said. That sucks. What happened? The usual, Mom said. Money, stress. She says he doesn't take anything seriously. She says she's done being the only adult. I told her she's being dramatic. Marriage is hard work. I had my own opinions about who was dramatic in this scenario. I kept them to myself. What about the house? I asked. Who's staying there? He is, she said. She doesn't care. She just wants out. But he can't afford the payments on his own, not with child support. We're trying to help. Help how? I asked slowly. A little here and there, she said. Covering a mortgage payment now and then. Buying groceries. Watching the kids. Family takes care of family. Déjà vu washed over me. Mom, I said, you can't carry their entire mortgage. You and Dad are close to retirement. You've already tied your finances to that house once. She bristled. You always make it about money, she said. Your grandparents would have wanted us to help him. My grandparents wanted you to help both of us, I said. They said so. In writing. She hung up. Over the next year, I heard bits and pieces of the slow-motion collapse. Ethan fell behind on payments. The adjustable rate on his mortgage adjusted up. Child support bills piled up. He called the bank. He called my parents. He called anyone but a financial counselor. Mom started making comments like, he's just had such bad luck, and, the bank is being so heartless. I watched from my duplex, paying my fixed-rate mortgage on time, putting a little aside every month, and thought, luck had nothing to do with it. Choices did. Still, when the inevitable happened, it hit me harder than I expected. I was at my office one Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Ashley Miller? A professional voice asked. Yes, I said, wary. This is Karen with First County Bank, she said. I'm calling regarding a property we'll be listing for short sale at 1849 Maple Crest. I was given your name as a potential interested party. Maple Crest. Ethan Street. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Who gave you my name? I asked, voice tight. The homeowner, she said. Mr. Ethan Miller. He mentioned you work in accounting and own property, and that you might be in a position to help. I closed my eyes. Of course. We're exploring options to avoid full foreclosure, she continued. The bank is willing to consider a short sale with a qualified buyer, ideally a cash buyer, in order to move quickly. Would you be interested in reviewing the file? I thought of my savings, the equity in my duplex, the line of credit I'd been approved for but hadn't used yet. In pure numbers, it was possible. Email me the packet, I said. No promises. She did. An hour later, I sat at my desk after hours, the office empty, reading through Ethan's disastrous file. He owed more than the house was worth. The past due amount was huge. The bank was willing to take a loss just to avoid the hassle of foreclosing and maintaining another property. Their proposed short sale price was low. Lower than the house had been worth even before my grandparents' money prettied it up. Cash buyer preferred, the note said. I ran calculations. If I bought it at that price with cash, I could rent it out and still make a margin after taxes and insurance. It would stretch me. I'd be less comfortable. But I could do it. The question wasn't could. It was should. Mom answered on the first ring when I called that night. Have you talked to Ethan? She asked immediately. Not yet, I said. The bank called me. She sighed. They said they might, she said. We told them you're good with this stuff. Maybe you could help him negotiate something. Or co-sign. Or, she trailed off. Or buy it, I said. Silence. Finally, she said, that's one option. Is it the one you're angling for? I asked. We just want to keep the house in the family, she said. Your grandparents' money is in those walls. It would kill them to see strangers living there. They're dead, Mom, I said softly. They're beyond caring about drywall. Don't be cruel, she snapped. You know what I mean. It's their legacy. No, I said. Their legacy was supposed to be giving both of us a start. You turned it into granite countertops in one sibling's kitchen. She bristled. We've been over this, she said. You're doing fine. Ethan got the short end of the stick in a lot of ways. He has kids. He has responsibilities. So do I said. They just don't look like yours. She took a breath. If you buy the house, she said, shifting gears, you could rent it to him. Lower than market, just enough to cover your costs. It would save him. It would save us. We can't keep helping with the mortgage. We're drowning. So you want me to become his landlord and your safety net, I said. We want you to be part of the solution, she said. With your blessing, we could tell the bank there's a buyer. They'd work with you. They like you. The flattery slid right off me. I need time to think, I said. To run numbers. Emotionally, this is a lot. Well, don't take too long, she said. They gave him a deadline. I'm aware, I said. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my small living room, surrounded by furniture I'd bought secondhand, in a duplex my grandparents had never helped me buy, staring at the file on my laptop. If I did nothing, the bank would foreclose. They'd auction the house. Some investor would buy it. Ethan would lose his house. My grandparents' squirreled away money would become just part of the market. My mom would be devastated. If I stepped in, I could control the outcome. But I'd also tie myself financially to the very thing that had caused so much resentment. And I knew my mom. If I bailed them out, she'd see it as proof she'd been right all along. That I was fine. That she'd invested wisely in Ethan, and it had paid off because I could now save them. I didn't want to write that story for her. I wanted to write mine. So I decided on one condition. If I bought the house, it wouldn't be to save Ethan. It would be to save myself from living the rest of my life in the shadow of a decision I hadn't made. I met with the bank's representative, Karen, in person. We sat in a glass-walled office with a view of the parking lot. She slid a thick folder across the desk. "You've seen most of this," she said. "Here are the updated numbers. If you can come in at this price, with proof of funds, we're prepared to greenlight a short sale. We'll waive deficiency against your brother. Clean slate for him. You'd get the house free of his debt." I flipped through the pages. "So once the sale is complete," I said, "the bank won't pursue Ethan for the remaining balance?" "That's correct," she said. "Assuming everything is done by the deadline." "And the current homeowners?" I asked. "How long do they have to move out?" "We'd like it vacant at closing," she said. "But we can build in a 1-month rent back if necessary." I nodded. "Okay," I said. "I'm in." She blinked. "Just like that?" she asked. "Just like that," I said. "I've been running numbers for 2 weeks. They still work." She smiled. "You are your grandparents' granddaughter," she said. "They were always very prepared." Something in my chest squeezed. "They were," I said. We drew up the offer. The bank tentatively accepted, subject to Ethan agreeing to the terms and vacating the property. That meant it was time to tell my family. We met at my parents' house. Mom had insisted. "Family meeting," she said, like we were still kids, and she was about to scold us for fighting over the remote. Dad sat at the head of the table, tired and quiet. Ethan slouched in a chair, arms crossed, jaw set. I placed a folder on the table. Inside was a copy of the purchase offer. "The bank has accepted my proposal," I said. "If we move forward, I'll buy the house at the agreed-upon price as a cash buyer. They'll consider Ethan's mortgage satisfied. No more payments. No foreclosure on his record. No lawsuit for the difference." Mom's face lit up. "Oh, thank God," she said. "I knew you'd come through. You're such a good sister." Ethan just glared. "What's the catch?" he asked. "The catch," I said, "is that once the sale closes, the house is mine. Completely. I will be the sole owner on the deed. If I let you stay there, it will be as my tenant, under a lease. At a rent amount I decide. Or I may choose not to rent to you at all." Mom flinched. "What do you mean may choose not to?" she demanded. "Where else is he supposed to go?" "Anywhere he can afford," I said. "Just like I did when I left home with no help." "That's unfair," she said. "You have no idea what he's been through. The divorce, the kids, the job market. He had help," I said. "A lot of it. Starting with my inheritance. I had to build mine from scratch." Ethan scoffed. "Are you seriously still crying about that?" he said. "Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted the money to go where it could do the most good. That was the house. That was me." I looked at him. "If they'd wanted you to have all of it," I said, "they could have written the will that way. They didn't. They trusted Mom to be fair. She wasn't." Mom's eyes filled. "We did our best," she said. "We didn't know things would turn out like this." "That's exactly the point," I said. "No one ever knows. That's why you don't gamble with someone else's safety net." Dad quietly cleared his throat. "What happens if we say no?" he asked. "If Ethan doesn't agree?" "Then the bank will foreclose," I said. "They'll auction the house. You'll almost certainly get nothing. They'll likely pursue a deficiency judgment for the remaining balance. It'll wreck his credit for years. At least this way. You walk away with a zero balance instead of a giant negative." Mom looked at Ethan. "Sweetie," she said, "we can't risk the house going to some stranger who doesn't care about you. If your sister owns it, you'll be safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. "From consequences?" Ethan stared at the folder. "So you buy it," he said slowly. "Then what? You let me stay there until I'm back on my feet?" "That depends on your feet," I said. "And your behavior. And the market. I haven't decided whether it makes more sense to rent it as is, renovate and flip, or move in myself. But what I will not do is become your new bank. I am not signing up to chase you for late rent the way the bank chased you for payments." His jaw tightened. So this is revenge, he said. Cool. It's not revenge, I said. It's me using an opportunity to rebuild something that should have been mine in the first place. If I wanted revenge, I'd let the bank take it and watch you squirm. Dad looked at me for a long moment. You really have the cash for this? He asked. On your own? Yes, I said. On my own. No co-signers, no grandparents. Just me, my duplex, and 6 years of saving. He exhaled. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Mom shot him a look. You're proud she's taking your sons home? She said. I'm proud she built something from nothing, he said. We gave Ethan a head start and he lost it. She didn't get one and she still got here. That's something. Ethan pushed his chair back. Whatever, he said. Just tell me where to sign. The weeks leading up to closing were a study in grief. Ethan moped around the house, packing boxes half-heartedly. Mom cried every time she drove past the for sale sign. I kept my distance. I had inspections to arrange, contractors to meet, financing paperwork to finalize for my line of credit even though the bulk of the purchase would be cash. The appraisal came in right where we expected. The bank approved the short sale. The closing date was set. The morning of, I put on a simple blazer and slacks, grabbed my folder, and drove to the title office. Mom and Dad were already there when I walked in. Ethan arrived a few minutes later, looking like he hadn't slept. Karen from the bank sat on one side of the table, a neat stack of documents in front of her. The title agent sat at the head, flipping through pages. Okay, she said. We're here to finalize the short sale of 1849 Maple Crest from Mr. and Mrs. Miller to Ms. Ashley Miller. The bank has approved the negotiated payoff. Once this is complete, the previous mortgage will be considered satisfied. She slid documents to Ethan. Sign here. And here. Initial here. He signed, jaw clenched, not looking at me. I signed my stack next. Affidavits. Disclosures. Each signature felt like a nail sealing one chapter and opening another. When it was done, the title agent smiled. Congratulations, Ashley, she said. You're the new owner. Mom's eyes filled again. I hope you're happy, she said. You've taken everything from him. I didn't take anything, I said calmly. I bought a house from a bank that was about to take it anyway. I'm the reason he's not walking away with a foreclosure and a lawsuit. You could have let us stay, she said. You could have made it easy. You could have honored Grandpa and Grandma's wishes, I said. You could have told me the truth before emptying the account. We don't always get to have it easy. She shook her head. They would not have wanted this, she said. They wouldn't have wanted you to steal from one grandchild to decorate the other's living room, I said. We don't always get what we want. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Ethan finally looked up at me. Are you going to raise the rent? He asked. If, and that's a big if, I decide to rent to you, I said, the rent will be market rate. Not higher, not lower. If I decide not to, I'll give you whatever notice is required by law. That's the only promise I'm making. He stared at me, eyes hard. You're heartless, he said. No, I said. I'm done being used. There's a difference. In the end, I didn't rent to him. He moved into a small apartment across town with a roommate he met online. Mom begged. Just 6 months, she said. Just until he gets back on his feet. I can't run a business on until, I said. I need leases, not vague promises. She called me cruel. I reminded her that she hadn't considered my feet at all when she'd gambled my start on his. The house stood empty for a month while I made some repairs. Nothing major. Fixing leaks. Replacing worn carpet. Neutral paint over the bold colors Jessica had chosen. Then I listed it. 3-bedroom home in quiet cul-de-sac, the ad said. Available immediately. Managed by local owner. I had applications within a week. A nurse with 2 kids. A young couple who both worked from home. A retired teacher. People who wouldn't think twice about the history of the down payment. In the end, I rented to the nurse. She needed the backyard. Her references were stellar. She paid the deposit on time. Our relationship was simple. She paid rent. I fixed things. No guilt. No emotional blackmail. Just business. My parents adjusted neurologically to the new reality. They still lived in their own house. For now. Their health was slowly declining. Their finances, not great. They tiptoed around the subject of the old inheritance whenever I was around. Grandma and Grandpa's names came up less. I think it hurt to remember what they'd done. But they still tried to spin it their way. One afternoon, Mom and I were sitting on her back porch when she said, out of nowhere, "You know, none of this would be happening if the economy hadn't tanked. Your brother would have been fine." We didn't know. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he just would have found a more expensive way to be irresponsible. Either way, you made a decision without my consent, using money I had a legal right to. You can't blame the economy for that." She sighed. "We were scared," she said. "He was struggling. He had a baby. You were always so capable. It just felt easier to lean on you, even when you didn't know it." "That's the part that hurts," I said. "Not that you helped him. That you did it with my share and lied about it. That you assumed my resilience meant I could carry an extra 50 pounds on my back forever." She looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know it doesn't fix anything. But I am." I believed her. At least that she believed herself. I also knew apologies didn't refill bank accounts. They didn't erase years of compound interest I never got. What they could do maybe was stop the pattern. If she felt even a fraction of the discomfort I felt sitting in that basement as a teenager, waiting for the furnace to kick on, maybe she'd think twice before redistributing someone else's future again. People ask me whether buying the house felt like revenge. Honestly, not in the Hollywood way. There was no slow clap. No perfectly timed monologue. Just a lot of paperwork and a weird silence in my chest where teenage Ashley used to dream about fair outcomes. The satisfaction was quieter. It was in getting yearly mortgage statements with a balance that went down instead of up. It was in watching that asset turn into something stable instead of a black hole. It was in knowing that my grandparents' money no longer lived in a place where it was being bled dry by bad decisions. And yes, there was a sharp edge of vindication watching my mom stand in a house closing, unable to spin this into a story where she was the hero. In the years since, I've bought other properties. Small ones. Nothing flashy. Duplexes, triplexes, little single-family homes like that first one. I managed them like the kind of landlord I wish my parents had been. Fair, firm, transparent. I don't promise things I can't deliver. I don't use one tenant's deposit to fix another tenant's toilet. I don't gamble with someone else's stability to rescue a favorite. Every time I drive past Ethan's old street now, I see kids' bikes in the driveway of my house. The nurse's kids chalking hopscotch squares. Pumpkins on the porch in October. It looks like a home again. Not a monument to my mother's bad choices. My relationship with my family is limited. Civil on holidays. Short on the phone. I help with explaining medical bills. I do not help with paying them. When my parents hint about moving into one of my properties someday, I smile politely and say my waiting list is long and I'd be happy to send them a copy of the application. Boundaries are the interest I earn now. If you're listening to this and thinking, I could never do what she did, I get it. We're taught that family is everything, that blood should always come before money, that good children sacrifice quietly. But here's what I learned watching my inheritance turn into someone else's mortgage payment. Money isn't just paper. It's time. It's options. It's years of work condensed into numbers. When someone takes that from you for your own good or for the family, without your consent, they're not just shifting resources. They're rewriting your choices. Sometimes, the only way to write yourself back into the story is to do something that looks selfish from the outside. Something like showing up as the cash buyer at the sale of the house that should have been partly yours from the start. I didn't buy that house to punish my brother. He punished himself plenty. I bought it because I refused to let the last echo of my grandparents' gift disappear into the bank's loss column. Would it have been kinder to leave things alone? Maybe. Kinder to whom, though? To the people who benefited from my silence? Or to the person who had to live with the consequences? I chose me. For once. And if that makes me the villain in my mother's version of the story, I can live with that. Because I'm the one who has to live in the life that story built. Thank you for listening to mine.